All right, that brings me to the last segment, Commie Mark. Look at him with his scraggly ass beard and his commie hat. I love this guy. I think he's hilarious. He's big brain. He's thinking outside the box and inside the box and around the box, and he crushes the box. I love this guy. I think he's hilarious, and he's very wise. I think we should be listening to him.
Hello, greetings, comrades. It's me, it's your man, Commie Mark. Special show tonight, special show this week. Very special guest, very excited about this one. I'd like to get onto it. But first, before we bring the special guest in, let's have a quick look. See who's here. Mr. Solomon says, first. He said that about 2 days ago, I think, when I first announced this. A lot of people were very excited to hear who was having on the show. I hope they're here. Virgil is here, dropping links to everything, some sneaky clues. Florida man here. Hello, greetings, comrade. Joe Frogger says late. What do you expect when we get all of our spare parts from Kazakhstan? That's how it goes here. Florida man says, I know this is on Monarchy versus Communism, but maybe have a moment to hear the word of the Emperor. Maybe, who knows? Spoon says Monarchy is greater than all, which may be the problem. So without further ado, let me introduce this week's special guest. Welcome to the Russian Troll Factory to Aydin Paladin here. Hello, greetings, comrade. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm sorry, comrade. Sorry.
Yeah, you've got to stay in the kayfabe universe, while you're here. You get bonus points for any communist references that you make.
Oh, I see. I don't know how good I'll be on that one.
New Comic Book Normie says, don't go in the basement. Just trust me. Lots of people showing up. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Donna says we need a Princess of the Moon.
There is a Princess of Mars.
A lot of your friends, it looks like, Sean. Are we debating Queen Aydin? We'll get onto that. Good day.
Well, Spoon, who said that, is the other person who was on with a debate with Adam and Sitch on Monarchy. So that would be his comment explained.
All right, that makes sense. Make sure you remember to like and subscribe. The new people who are here because you like Aydin, you might like me as well, or not. But subscribe so you can find out.
Commie Mark is very funny, and I really like your content, man. So,
thank you. That means a lot coming from you. So yeah, I got you here. All right, let me let's start at the start. So when we have new guests on the show who haven't appeared before, this is the first question that they have to answer.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
Oh, hell no, based Senator McCarthy, who did nothing wrong.
Outrageous.
Yeah, probably. I understand.
I invented a new drink today. It's like half a Monster and half a martini thing. I'm calling it like a Monster Martini. It's so
I don't know about
delicious.
that.
It's like
Hey,
just pure sugar.
yeah, what did we used to, well, I forget what you call it when you just have a Red Bull and vodka. There's a special name for that. Essentially the same thing. At least with the I don't know, with the martini though, that might be
Um,
interesting.
no, it's like with a Moscato wine.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah. Oh, that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's actually probably pretty good.
it is
Very
delicious.
carbonated.
Yeah. Because one of the like I found that like when you're doing a show, I want to have a drink during the show, but I
Yep.
can't just go and make a coffee in it like in the middle of the show. I watched a show once where someone went off to make a coffee. That same person, I watched him also on another show go to unload his washing machine, like and just leave the guest like there in it. Like it's Wise Guys if people in the audience want to know who that was. Glacier Comics asks, how far off is Krishna Kid? I'm aiming for August 30 and I want to launch a book on Krishna's birthday. That seems like a good idea. It should be trending in it, like in the world. Hello, everyone who's here. Monty, whatever. Okay, so we've done the first question. That's the first question. All right, so for people in my audience who don't know who you are you?
Hello, guys. I know some people I recognize in the chat, obviously. But if you don't know me, I'm Aydin Paladin. I do videos that predominantly look at the intersection of social psychology and politics and current news. So the monarchy stuff is not actually my field of expertise at all. It's just something I became interested in. And it's funny because I think there was this perception that I only became interested in it because Trump lost. Nah, Trump is a symptom, a symptom of many issues in modern politics. It's not, him losing is not why I got interested in it. It was instead because I see a lot of failures in democracy outside of that. And one thing I've actually noticed, and I'll ask you if you've noticed this too, have you tended to see that every person, left and right, has thrown the word democracy into every speech they make at increasing frequency of late? And I don't know if I get a real Inigo Montoya kind of reaction to that. Like, you keep using that word, and I don't think it means what you think it means.
Somehow, okay, so one of the things that was interesting to me about this conversation is I think that we're going to agree on a lot of things, like particularly the failures of what we're given as democracy.
Right.
And it's interesting that they've been able to like corner the word democracy to mean specifically like parliamentary representative democracy, like when it just means like that we all decide, like it doesn't necessarily mean that one thing, and you know what I mean? Because
what they seem to mean by democracy is good. So this is a good thing, and it can't be questioned. Whatever you think about the book, because there are some contentious things in it for sure. But Hoppe sure named his, most famous work quite well, which is Democracy, the God That Failed. And what I found interesting about that is that many people use democracy as if they are invoking the name of God. So when they say our democracy, this is very dangerous to our democracy. Our democracy is at threat. And the Republicans used to do this far more, but it's currently in the Democrat wheelhouse because this is a fundamental problem of democracy. It's, well, we're in the majority. We have majority power at this point. So we get to subject you. We get to tyrannize you for a little bit. Then we become the minority. And then the other side that's now the majority gets to tyrannize us. I don't believe that that's conducive to liberty whatsoever, nor to the public good. Trading off of who gets to tyrannize one another back and forth over a 4-year, 8-year cycle is not conducive to liberty.
And is not very efficient either.
No.
Is my biggest criticism of that. If we're constantly like shifting from side to side, we're only like budging like the center like a tiny little bit, like every time. Like I keep saying, like there's two ways we can have communism. One takes 1,000 years of democracy. The other takes like one summer of guillotines.
Well, I think the ultimate outcome of democracy is communism, actually. I think it inherently moves in that direction. If you look at also Kiklos, now I would have a different definition of this probably than you would, but Plato proposed this, that governments all move in cycles, and that at the end after democracy is tyranny. Now he means something by that, and if you think it's communism, I would say I fear tyranny and communism, obviously, and I think a lot of good examples why I fear that. But if democracy is headed towards communism, which I think it actually is, and it has historically, then well, I'm next up. Monarchy comes after that in the cycle, if Plato is to be believed. So I only have to wait a couple hundred years. I guess so. But it seems to me that democracy currently in its state is moving towards communism, but in the failed way that communism has been implemented in the past, I would say, not in the idealistic Marxist sense.
I don't disagree. There are like I'm getting ahead of myself here. Like the most successful like monarchies that you'll be able to point to. Your the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, etc. Sweden definitely has a king. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
They
technically, but the most successful. So okay, so what are the wealthiest countries per GDP right now in the Western world? That's excluding China, but China is a unique situation. I think we know why it's a unique situation.
I think actually. So
per GDP,
in Kuwait, one Kuwait dinari, whatever, is $2.47 or something ridiculous like that. They got some strong ass currency over there. But yeah, I would.
It's the current the European countries, which I'm using colloquially as Western, that have that are wealthiest per GDP are Luxembourg and Liechtenstein, both of which are monarchies. They're constitutional monarchies, but they're monarchies nonetheless. So the countries that are doing now, they're micro countries as well, which gives them much less to rule over, right? Yeah. But there are currently something that I think gets sort of glossed over is that this idea that monarchy is a thing of the past, and we're moving on this constant move forward towards progress. When in reality, history tends to be a little bit cyclical, at least in terms of governments. Certainly that was what Plato had made note of as far back as during the Greek period, that governments tend to move in cycles, and to propose that there is one ideal and perfect system of government, I don't think is realistic. I'm not proposing monarchy as a perfect system of government, because such a thing cannot exist, because humans are flawed, and if humans are flawed, then any system of government they're involved in therefore will be flawed. So all that matters to me is maximizing liberty and minimizing suffering to the point that it intrudes upon liberty, because people are free to engage in their own suffering if they're truly liberated.
That is true. I agree as well, but I think the answer to achieving that is through gay space communism or whatever. But I think that you're also agreeing that that's the long-term aim of all of society, the long-term where democracy is heading. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think the goal of democracy is liberty. I think it's so. For example, when I say liberty, what a lot of people think I mean is, excuse me, what I have seen come up in this is that liberty equals voting. That's not true at all. I don't believe so. Voting is not in any way necessarily liberty. You can be liberated without having the ability to vote for a leader, and I think you and I would probably agree for that. That voting is not the maximalization of liberty nor freedom. I find that that's a strange sort of artifact only of democracy, that has this idea that voting is the most important thing. And the act of voting actually makes citizens conscripts into the system, in exchange for their right to vote. And the state will always want to collect on what they get from their conscripts. So what I mean by that is, by voting in a weird way, you are a conscript of the state. The state can come and reap what it wants because you are conscripted.
Yeah.
And that can be in the form of taxation. That can be in the form of subjugation. You have given your input into the state. They can take it back.
Yeah, like it's like you're consenting to your own. What's the word I'm looking for? They treat you shit, I mean, is what I'm trying to say. We've got a super chat already from Fuck Google too for $5. Thank you, comrade. Says one part of crisis is generational transfer of power. Boomers not willing to accept and unwilling to share. It's what's happening regardless. And old committees can't fix. This is certainly true, and that people who have the most are the least willing to share what they have. I don't know if you've ever sat with a homeless person, but they're like pretty keen to share, like their.
It's astounding. It's astonishing.
Or whatever.
You might be interested to know this, but when I was in high school, I was an anarcho-communist, and I worked with Food Not Bombs, which is I think they might be an international institution, but certainly in America, what they are is they're a anarcho-communist, vague grouping of people, and mostly what we did was we tried to give where I went to high school. So this is a long time ago. I've obviously changed my political opinions, but I've always been very concerned with people being mistreated by the government. And in Baltimore City, it's illegal to feed homeless people unless you are the government or a government approved system. So if I give a homeless person a sandwich, I'm technically not supposed to do that. They're not going to arrest you, but they could. and that's based on a teach a man to fish sort of paradigm, right? And if you give homeless people food, it incentivizes them to be homeless. That's ridiculous. It's absolute bullshit. I recognized that when I was 16, that's an absurdist kind of policy. So, and I worked with homeless people for like about 2 or 3 years at that period of time. And yeah, they're some of the most, giving people. They'll absolutely, give you the shirt off their back or anything like that. And a lot of them have mental health issues, which is part of that. But a lot of them are genuinely good people who have been forgotten and left behind by the system. And I don't like that at all.
Like here in the UK, we have the most aggressive like anti-homeless architecture. Like, they just put like
oh my gosh,
random arms of
like
on a bench, whack some arms.
I've seen them.
So you can't sleep there. Sorry. Put in bus stops, like all the seats are at like 45-degree angles or whatever, so you can rest your buttocks on there, like while you're standing, but you ain't sleeping there. Like, not gonna happen. All right, just to like, we're getting really ahead of like where I wanted to. So, a question for you is, what does Aydin Paladin mean? The hard questions you get on this show.
Oh, the name?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just I used to play Final Fantasy 11. I started playing when I was 11 years old, and I was making a new character. I'm 11, and I'm not very creative or knowledgeable at 11, so I just random selected, and I was like reroll name for my character, and I got Aydin, and I was a paladin. So that's all it is. It's pretty simple.
I did think it might be something like that. I thought it might have been a clever joke, like for a monk character or something, like aiding a paladin or whatever.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, I really wasn't. I didn't main paladin. It just rhymes. I was actually mostly a bard, so majorly, primarily a bard and a white mage. So, but I did play paladin as well. That's it. It's nothing complicated. No hidden meaning, no dog whistle or some shit.
Oh, we got a $3 super sticker from Grant 3PO. Hello, greetings, comrade. Gonna get him on as well. Like
Grant 3PO. Hey, man.
Enjoying a bit of success at the moment. Like other YouTubers seem to like what I'm doing. The audience less so. But the other YouTubers think it's great. Which is pretty funny.
For sure, man. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how I came across your videos. I think YouTube. No, someone told me to watch or they referenced you, and I went and watched a bunch of your videos. Like, holy shit, this is really good, man.
Yeah. Like all of my best videos just got took down the other week. Got
Oh, that's
copyright
fun.
struck. Copyright struck, and it
Oh, yeah, that's
son
always
of a
fun.
bitch or whatever. Yeah. I actually prepared like some questions for you.
Oh, I've also got my notes.
Yeah, but your questions are probably like way smarter.
No, I don't have any
than mine.
questions. I mean, like you just asked because I always expect to be on the defensive on these kinds of stuff, and it's fine. My notes are only 10,000 page or 10,000 words long. It's fine.
I only have like 10 notes or whatever. Yours are going to be much more refined and intellectual than mine. Like,
No,
my
I
next
made
question-
them beforehand. I only added a couple new things. So,
Well, do you have an answer for this in your
Mm.
notes? What's with the Not Daredevil t-shirt?
oh, okay. Well, that one's easy. Now Mark Wade, who I am no longer a fan of at all, and who blocked me on Twitter. I said like one slightly rude thing. It wasn't even rude. I like asked him a question. I don't know if you know who Mark Wade. Mark Wade wrote Daredevil Volume 3, and or the start of it, not all of it, obviously, but he was heavily involved in Daredevil Volume 3. And Daredevil is my favorite comic book superhero. I've always loved Daredevil ever since I was a kid. He's always been my favorite, like after Spider-Man. And well, when I was a kid, I loved Spider-Man. But then what happened actually is my dad had an enormous collection of Silver Age comics, and he didn't know what to do with them. And so actually, he wanted me to sell them on eBay. But instead, I'm like 12 years old at this point. Instead, I started reading them, and I was like, "These are great, all Silver Age stuff." Because he thought these had to be worth money. He told me to sell them to help me make a college fund, right? I did not very quickly did not want to sell them. Really, the Daredevil ones, and the Daredevil ones, interestingly enough, and they weren't his comics. A friend gave them to him, and they're like in the 70s, would have been the 80s, I guess. Just gave him thousands of comics. Had no idea how much they were worth, obviously back then, and he has like it's Daredevil 1 through like 50, the whole collection.
Wow.
And just not gonna sell it, man. Not even gonna touch it. So, but I loved Daredevil. I thought he was such an interesting character. And Mark Wade's run was when I got really back into comics back in because I read this as a kid, and then I didn't really read comics for a few years. When I was around 2021, I started getting into the comic scene again, and I really liked Mark Wade's run. And in Mark Wade's run, there's a Daredevil wears a shirt to a Christmas party, a sweater to a Christmas party that says "I'm not Daredevil" because he's been outed at this point. Everyone knows that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, but he's still kind of playing up that he's not Daredevil. So that's it.
The reason that I ask is just like the most basic plug for
I see. That's great, man.
And in fact, this
that's based on the Golden Age version, yeah?
It is, yeah. Like I've taken public domain art and just relettered it. You know, like a Team 4-star kind of thing, or like C-Lab or something, but in comic book form. But this is a rare. There's only 3 of these. These are the double cover editions. Check that out. Like it's got 2 covers and 2 back covers. Like so this is a rare collectible item I'm going to auction on the show right now.
Well, I love that bit about the Golden Age characters, that they've come into public domain, so people can do whatever the hell they want with them.
Oh yeah, and when I came up with that, it was the same time that Dynamite were relaunching the character with Gail Simone in it, and it was just too perfect timing. As stencil artist Jan says, it's meta in it. Yeah. There's some people in the chat. Matt Barr has been trying to get this drinking game going for ages. That whenever I say whatever, you have to drink in it. Like, but
I mean, I'll play along, but if I get fucked up, you're to blame.
Yeah, like, all right, do it, but you'll all die. Like, as long as you don't stop watching, as long as you leave the video playing, I do mind if you don't. Okay, so a week or so ago, you posted this on Twitter, and and this is the reason that this whole event is happening. Yeah. And like, I really love your channel a lot. Like it's
Oh,
real
thanks, man.
good. There's I want standardized thumbnails like this, and it looks the part. It looks great. I checked earlier, you got like 10 million views or something, and I bet there's more hidden like under the hood as well. And
Who knows?
it's great. My favorite videos though are the ones about math, because that's where like I really like. Okay, the SJWs have gone too far now. Like,
Oh, the series I did on the critical race theory against math stuff. That was really frustrating. I mean, like, you know, James Lindsay obviously is the expert on that stuff. Like, he goes absolutely ham. Now he reads a lot of communist writers with a lot of disdain. So it might be difficult for people in your audience to.
there is nobody in my audience who is also a communist. It's weird, like, but there aren't any here.
That's all right. But okay, in that case, definitely check out James Lindsay, Critical Discourses, in that case, if you want the stuff on the CRT issues. But I'm a social scientist. But what that means in practice is I'm mostly a statistician. So mostly what I deal with is numbers and mathematics. So I don't like seeing math get perverted. And math is perverted all the time. I mean, 69.
Oh, no.
Nice.
I love doing it. You know, like manipulating the numbers to say what I want them to say. That's one of my favorite things. Being a
God, no.
propaganda artist.
That's evil. That's fucking evil, dude.
Part of good marketing. Well, there was some. I was leading to some. The math videos. I like those. That's when they went too far. Yeah. So you know this, that you have like you can have a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of the Arts, and like those are the two things. And when they were doing when the SJWs are in the art thing, I didn't care. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like those subjects have always been subjective. Like, and you can put whatever you want, read whatever you want. You can't be wrong as long as you can explain yourself, like why that's what you think. Like
sure, whatever. It's subjective.
But then in the science side, it's like no, like this is what it says. This is the answer or whatever. And
I read a.
Just
real quick, there was a dissertation that I did a video on several years ago now. It was a math dissertation from a woman who kind of got some public scrutiny, and her math, it was a pure mathematics PhD dissertation, and it was about half of it was about her just like sitting in a park and being like, there's racism happening all around me. Like it was half of it just like it was her blog essentially. Her advisor wrote half of it. From what I could see, because their advisor was a Fields Medal scholar. And the rest of it was, it doesn't matter if I'm right or not, because this is subjective math. Because it's my lived experience of math. This is theoretical mathematics, like hardcore theoretical quantum mathematics stuff. So that I certainly don't understand. Like I do statistics. I know my one lane of math. That's my one lane. And so I couldn't understand it. I mean, I understand a little bit of it. But when you start writing out these massive giant equations all over the chalkboard that are like, 50 lines long, I don't really get it. But by her own contention, it was like, it doesn't work. It doesn't have to work. It doesn't matter because it's about my feelings. And that kind of stuff is very deleterious to society and what leads to Lysenkoism, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So perfect. We both agree that maths is great, which brings me back to this. So you posted this about the French Revolution, and I replied to this with the metric system didn't go far enough, and the metric system is great. Like, I'll never stop standing the metric system. I would murder 1,000 French kings with the metric system in it. The metric system is beautiful. It unites length.
I will agree.
Current, like everything in it. Like, if it's a thing that you can measure, metrics got it covered. Like,
So
and
I will, having grown up in America, I will agree because our system makes no fucking sense at all. It's completely confusing. Uh, I've lived in the UK for 2.5 years, and it's so hard to retrain yourself in the metric system from the imperial system, which is or whatever the Americans use, like a bastardized even imperial system. It's its own thing. It's very hard to retrain yourself, and I think one of the reasons that students struggle with measurements mathematics in America at an early age is because our system makes no goddamn sense.
yeah, right.
It's nonsense.
So I have a small child or whatever, and teaching him maths and stuff when he was a baby. And you only have to teach the rules of metric once, and you can measure everything like because they all use the same like.
It's a base 10 system.
It's beautiful. It's one of mankind's greatest inventions.
Well, base 10 makes sense. You have 10 fingers, so base 10 makes sense.
I think that even in the replies to that tweet, someone mentioned about base 12, which is pretty sick. I like base 12 as well.
Well,
But
I mean, base 10 is the easiest. When we looked at the data on it, base 10 helps the most also with students who are struggling with math, because again, you can do with finger counting. Now that falls off after a certain point. Like when you get into higher mathematics, you can't still do the finger counting. But for early education, it makes it so that students are far more able to be on an even level and keep up more easily without falling behind.
it's great. Long live the metric system. And of course, that's a result of the French Revolution. Like, if it was up to the monarchists, we'd still have the imperial system. Like,
But we do. But we do. We do still have the imperial system. So getting rid of the monarchs didn't get rid of that. Now did it? Right?
I'm trying my best to make some arguments. Wow, there's so many people in the chat. Like, they're calling us nerds. Hello, Charlie's London. Send us a super chat earlier. I don't think I actually read it out. The chat's going real fast. Charlie's London for £4.49 says, "Take my capitalist money, you gulag dwelling cretin." Also, restoring on hate fact being distorted. Trust me. It's an art form, like propaganda is. Like it's a skill. Like it's marketing for the people. Or whatever. Stanislaus Jan over here standing for the imperial system. He's wrong. I will fight to the death for the metric system. Like ahead of communism, like if it could be called metric mark in another universe. Okay, but we're not here to debate the metric system versus imperial.
Although that was what I argued to debate about, was the metric system, to be fair.
Oh, really?
No, I think actually the metric system is good, and I explained why I think it is. I think it's really it's easy for young children to get a grasp on, because otherwise imperial system has, because it's based on very, very old systems which don't necessarily align with each other and aren't necessarily, they are empirical to a certain degree, but it's why none of these systems all match up. What is empirical, however, is based on how you choose to measure it. So any measurement can be accurate, just depends on the number you associate with it. That being said, base 10 metric system is easier to understand. So you're going to have a more even distribution of students who are succeeding at mathematics from an earlier age under a metric system. I would agree with that, even though I don't use or like the metric system, but whatever.
The best. Unifies every unit of measurement, like easily translatable across, because it's all in thousands or whatever. So that's not really what I wanted to talk to you about. It's just like a lame joke, and like some imperial joke, whatever, at the expense of monarchists.
That's fine. But if you want to go to Kunat Lenin's quote there, I do believe he's correct that the modern problems that we face can date back to the French Revolution. In Europe, it's more clearly evident that the failures of democracy begin with World War I and into World War II, where it just moves towards increased movement towards tyranny, I would say. with more and more government and less individual control over things, even though they become democratized at the same time. There's a strange perception that what happened before the French Revolution was the worst period of history. But the problem with that is that we are looking at it from a technological lens that does not totally assess the quality of life for the time period of the French peasant before the Revolution. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't reasons for the French Revolution. There obviously were. There were reasons for the American Revolution, although I would ask that we be very clear about what those were. The French Revolution in particular has some pretty bad rulership there, okay? I understand why that happened. The American Revolution, however, we need to be a little bit more critical about. Why did the American Revolution happen? What was the main impetus? The one that is so oft quoted and given as the reason, and I would say this for American viewers in particular, because I've asked a lot and talked to a lot of Americans who have a very instantaneous... Mark, I'm sure you get this all the time, that when you bring up communism as an even idea, people will react extremely negatively and spurg out without being able to try and approach the idea sincerely. And I find with Americans, they tend to do that towards communism, monarchy, or anything that's not democracy, basically. Anything that's not democracy tends to result
not the American flavor of democracy as well.
The particular American flavor of democracy, exactly. And the thing is that what was the main impetus in terms of the explosive event is the Boston Tea Party. And what was it about? High taxation on a luxury good.
Yeah.
No one was being flogged and beaten. I mean, there were slaves, obviously, but relatively fewer at that period of time, actually. No one was being flogged and beaten for saying fuck the king. And in fact, King George at that period of time had offered the Americans greater independence. They refused. The founding fathers, they refused. They wanted pure independence. They didn't want more freedom from the king. They refused that. And it was over the cost of tea.
Well, that's the same perspective that we have over here, isn't it? Like, the reason was the Americans didn't want to pay the taxes to pay us back for the war that we just fucking won for them, innit? The Dongs in the chat says the main impetus was the push in the British Empire to end slavery in 1772, but Americans don't like to talk about that.
They sure don't like to talk about that now, do they?
I love slam dunking Americans with the fact that slavery was, like, there was no slaves in England before America even existed.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not a totally American idea. Obviously, slaves have existed throughout history. They exist now. There are thousands of slaves in America today. Slavery has never ended. Slavery continues. Slavery is a heinous practice, but unfortunately, it's something that exists behind the curtains. But the British were far more against slavery than the Americans were. Now, there was some reason for why the Americans were in favor of it, which is because their economy was based on southern trade of things like cotton, which were massive farming farms and plantations that required so much labor that slavery made more sense to them economically, even though it was ethically disgusting and a violation of everything that any human being could possibly stand for. But at that period of time, and again, like I said, even today, there are people that still do these same things in the United States today. They utilize what is essentially slave labor via illegal immigrants.
Yeah, and well, I am a big proponent of the idea of wage slavery, and they just changed the rules. We're still like, unless you're born into property holdings, like,
well,
you know, so some people like are stuck in that loop, where you just cannot escape, or they have to work and not die.
I think that democracy has actually worsened the cycle of poverty, in terms of keeping people outside of the ability to move up in society. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I don't think it's helped in the way that it's claimed to have helped. And I don't know what system would be better. I don't think reducing everyone to a complete equal stance is necessarily the good way to do it either.
Well,
but I don't think democracy is actually currently working as it's supposed to allow upward mobility to the maximum degree that it could.
Well, if you think about like the general will or whatever, it's always gonna be like the majority trying to hold on to what they have in it,
For sure.
regardless of who's, no. It's like I said earlier, like people don't
But
want
that's
to
a
give.
failure of democracy.
Yeah,
Democracy is mob rule. And that's the
but
real problem with democracy,
this
is that
is
it's
the
a mob
part.
rule system.
This is the part where we are going to agree
All
quite
right.
heavily, I think. Uh,
All right, good.
in
We found it.
that having like one person who's just like, this is what we're doing and we're just gonna do it, is going to be more efficient. Like I mean, it can lead to far more terrible things, like the worst disasters or whatever, with the worst people like in charge or whatever, but it's efficient. How many months do politicians argue like backwards and forwards about
But
issues
this
instead
is
of
all
someone
this
just
is all
going,
problems of
"Whoa,
bureaucracy. This is problems of
decision."
democracy. This problem does not exist under monarchy. And the other reason why this problem does not exist under democracy, or why it exists under democracy, not under monarchy, is because the monarch is not incentivized in any way to want to be detrimental towards the wealth and health of his people. Now, there, of course, have always been really shitty and bad monarchs, but there have been terrible, terrible democratic leaders, and there have been terrible tyrants of any political ideology. So to ascribe it to one political ideology is very simplistic and limited in its scope and understanding. What instead needs to be understood is that because the monarch owns the state, he is also, or she is therefore also protector of their ward, and their wards are the people. Now, why would you want to limit and restrict the welfare and wealth of your people because their wealth is tied to yours? Now, of course, if we're talking about taxation, for example, the wealth that you gain as the monarch from the position of power from your subjects, your wealth will be tied to theirs to some degree. But the average taxation rate under the monarchies, as of like 1500 up until about the French Revolution period, was about 5%, maybe up to, I think it was 15% in Germany, 5 to 10% in most of the. Now we hear these Robin Hood stories of the horrible, overtaxation, but for the majority, they were 5 to 10%. What's the average taxation rate now in places like America? It's 35, 50%.
Yeah.
Massive taxation in terms of individual capacity to accumulate personal wealth. And by that, I mean the monarch does now will not be able to do things with that money, or they could if they chose to, but are not going to do things and say, I'm going to use this money to engage in a bunch of public utilities. They would do that if they thought that it meant that they would maximize their own wealth. You have to look at the monarch like a CEO rather than like you would a democratic leader who can easily leave their position and does leave their position. And any fuck up they make, they can transfer onto their successor.
Oh, yeah. Classic example of this is the whole Brexit scenario that happened here, right? Like the whole thing was like so the Conservative Party here, they hate Europe and it, like they always did. And then they were in a coalition with the Liberal Democrats in it, who are like the most pro-Euro party or whatever. And they were expecting like another coalition like after the election. So like David Cameron's like, oh yeah, bro, we'll do like a referendum, expecting like the coalition to happen, and for like the Liberals to negotiate that out and it like in there, we'll team up to be the government or whatever. And then it's just like, fuck this, I quit. Like if you're the monarch, you can't do that. Same
You
as
can't.
if you're
You can abdicate, but then you become Nikki, don't you? So, considering the thumbnail, I'd like to bring that up very quickly, if you don't mind. So, did the Bolsheviks uprise against Tsar Nicholas, or did they uprise against the temporary government, which was parliamentary and ostensibly democratic in Russia?
Well, this is the thing that like people like have this idea that being communist isn't democratic, which annoys me. It's like the most democratic in my opinion.
But we both agree that democracy is a flawed system. So what's the good in maximizing democracy?
This version certainly is like so. Okay, this is a point that I would make. That there's two things that we can do in it. Like we can do the best system where we keep like going forwards, everyone's got everything what they want, or we can do the system where everyone feels like they took part and were involved. Like and I'm more.
It's a feel-good system, right? But
yeah,
you know
get
you
your
don't actually
participatory like I took part, like I voted, done
get your little sticker.
Yeah. Which like I'm for more. I don't know if you've read Gaddafi's Green Book, yeah. But,
I have not.
You might be interested.
I'm willing to read anything. So,
like he was in a. Alright, so this is a thing, in constitutional monarchies or whatever, like you have the parliamentary system, and then the monarch is separate, like from that, and supposedly like impartial, or whatever, or at least doesn't publicly voice their opinions. They're just like a public figurehead, like for the.
Well, that's the unfortunate way that constitutional monarchies have become. It's not how they necessarily should act. The way that a constitutional monarchy probably should act, if it was to work correctly, would be for the monarch to step in when the democracy aspect of it has made stupid fucking decisions that will hurt the people. And unfortunately, that's basically how constitutional monarchy has worked, which is why, although I do consider myself mostly proponent of constitutional monarchy over absolute monarchy, I also see the value in absolute monarchy. But you have to understand that absolute monarchy is not, as it has often been described, as a totalitarian system. There have been examples of that, absolutely. But for the most part, they have not been absolutist systems. The absolutist systems have failed very quickly. The true absolute systems, where they centralize power, where they centralize power, when the monarchy centralizes all power, that's not worked. The monarchy still, even though they have absolute power, relies upon a system of lords and advisors that are working at the lower levels. And in fact, so again, I consider myself an anarcho-monarchist, which is that I would like individual fiefs, or whatever you want to call them, individual areas of society, to have the maximal ability to make decisions for their own areas. And I think you have a greater ability to do that if you have a monarch who is invested in the value of the land and ensuring that the value of the people, and by that I mean not in a monetary value necessarily, but in a health and wealth value simultaneous. You will not be well suited as a monarch who owns the land if your people are unhealthy, if they are suffering.
Yeah, you're not gonna like get the most resources out of what you have available, and if the people are suffering,
right,
or whatever. That's my biggest thing in it. Like, look at the society that we've built. Why doesn't everyone have dinner every day? Like, we can put like people on the moon and shit, but we can't like give sandwiches to people in what city? Pittsburgh, I don't know.
Baltimore. Well, I also lived in Pittsburgh, so.
Renault for $5 says, "Yo, Mark, she called tea a luxury good. How does that make you feel as a British person?"
Yo, I had a cup of tea right before this, so.
I hate tea. I drink coffee, but tea is one of those things that we, as the British, like culturally appropriated in it. Like everything that you think of as British, we stole from someone else in it. Like,
I don't know. What about sausage rolls?
Americans don't have sausage rolls, do they?
No, we don't. I was actually talking earlier to Spoon about this, and I was like, okay, British people get made fun of for their cuisine, which I think should be put in quotations, maybe. I mean, you can't beat a beef Wellington, but Americans don't know what black pudding is, and that is a shame. I'm truly upset about that. It's delicious.
It is very delicious and very triggering for vegans as well.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah, don't.
Nefarious says, "How do you get an actual intellectual on the show, Mark?" I don't know. Like, I've just been. I say that I'm a pseudo-intellectual.
I don't know if I should be considered an intellectual. By the way, I'm just a sped.
I'm just pretending, like I'm acting like I know what I'm talking about. Charlie's London for $4.49 says, "Henry VII had a black minstrel paid more money than his white counterparts. Captain of Aragon had a black lady in waiting, but Britain bad. No, we're good. Like, it angers me that Americans lecture us, the British, about like equality and stuff.
Well, it is a bit ridiculous. Look, I've gotten mad about this too recently over the monarchy thing because I look, I'm obviously an American if you can't fucking tell, but I have been very irritated, and I mean, like, people obviously I understand why they come to their opinions, but the reality is that Americans, and I think to a lesser degree Canadians, have this perception that the revolutions, such as they were this defining deific moment in human history that cannot be questioned, that cannot be looked at seriously. And in reality, the American quote unquote democracy, our grand experiment, did not produce maximalization of liberty, because under our democracy, we engaged in the most heinous violations of human rights that have existed in the modern world. We continued for them after the British Empire got rid of slavery, for example. And that's just one example in terms of slavery. So for that, I don't think that you can look at democracy as a system inherent and say democracy is a preferable system if you want to make sure that people are free and people are not being abused by a system. Democracy is not going to do that inherent.
Like, I will not be lectured by a nation founded by European corporations. Like, Nefarious for $5 says democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people.
But the people are retarded. If you're not familiar with that clip, it's amazing.
Yeah. Like, I've watched a bunch of that guy. Like, I'm working on this Hindu book at the moment, and I'm Krishna Kid.
Isn't he he's a cult leader though, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm 95% sure that he's the same guy from that Wild Wild Country show on Netflix, but rebranded to get away from
the fact that I think that people died under his cult, like a lot of people. I mean, evil people can sometimes say correct things, but that is the problem with democracy, I would say, predominantly, is that it tends to be mob rule. And what I care about, again, is maximal liberty. And I don't think that one group violating the rights of the other back and forth is liberty.
No. Yeah. Like, this is one. It's just a constant, pendulum swing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just plow through the middle, and get to where we're going already.
Well, look, I mean, if talking about getting to where we're going, I would really like for everyone to have basic income, for example. But the reality is that it's going to be very hard to do that. And when you incorporate systems like that, you are going to have certain people who will take advantage of those systems, as they take advantage of welfare, as they take advantage of any system. What I think, though, is that you probably have a better chance of getting an ability to take care of people under a system of monarchy than under democracy. Because under democracy, the systems of power change in terms of who is in power. Whereas under a monarchist system, there will be a general desire to want to take care of the wards of the state, because you don't want to hurt I'm using this very loosely, property. If you're the monarch, technically the people are sort of your property. The land certainly is your property, but the people are your wards, and therefore they're your charges. So you won't want them to suffer. Now, has that been the case throughout history? Of course not. But that would be the best form of a system of monarchy, is to want people to be taken care of under circumstances where they cannot provide for themselves. And I don't know if democracy does that well. I think charity does that the best, honestly. But if we're talking about a system that minimizes taxation and therefore maximizes wealth and maximizes individual capacity for spending and maximizes individual capacity for charity, I think monarchy might be a better system for maximizing charity. Charity from the monarch and charity from individuals.
I want us to build a society where people are just happy with what they have. Sure. Maybe I am spoiled because I have such a wonderful life, with the people that are in my life or whatever. But I feel like most people aren't happy enough with that. Like, make yourself better. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I'm really rambling. I'm really quite drunk. All these monster martinis are killing me. Render of $10 says, "I'm obviously American in case you can't tell. Australians can make convince American dialect convincing. Gonna need to see some receipts. We make fun of the British for their teeth, not the nasty
Oh, you want
flavor.
me to? Oh, mate, gonna put some shrimps on the barbie. Is it? Am I clearly on Australia now? No. Oh God, I'm so sorry I did that. I really hate myself for saying.
Dan Plagle says, Mark for King, I say. See, that was one of the things I was going to say. What about,
Oh God, this question.
What if the king decides, I want to be a communist? Like, that sounds good to me. Like, let's sign up for the monarchy.
Okay, well, this is always a question with monarchy of what if the king decides to do X, Y, or Z. The reality is that, in the words of the late great Trevor Moore, it's time for guillotines. And if the monarch does anything this is an interesting thing, even though monarchy is not a centralization of power, because it still has a bunch of systems of, elites, if you want to call them that, property owners and things like that, and people who advise the king. So it's not actually a centralized power, although it might seem that way to people who would look at it from a very basic point of view. It's not a centralized system. What you instead would get is that the good part, I guess, of a corrupt system of monarchy is you have one head of a snake to cut off, right? So if you truly, truly have a corrupt, evil monarch, there is one person to target. Whereas with a democracy, there's 1,000 snakes.
I completely agree with that. And when I was watching your debate with Adam Friended, I heard who kept saying, like, oh, yeah, but who does the king answer to or whatever? And they're screaming in the chat, the fucking guillotine. That's who he answers to.
Yeah. And I think that they looked at that and they said, "Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible. That you have to kill your."
When I was on with Adam, I was saying this. Like I was saying, give me all your money or you get the guillotine. You can give it up. Like that was an option.
A guillotine is a real option. And I think that they're like, no, we have to do everything peacefully. Guess what? The history of humanity is not peaceful, okay? Sometimes you are forced to this option, and you're forced that option when it is the last resort, hopefully. But if you have a functional system, then you don't use guillotines, right? It's only when things have gone totally tits up that's the last resort. But every monarch knows that is the last resort, and that will be what happens to them if they totally fuck up.
The guillotine is the boogeyman of monarchy, isn't it? Like, look at this. I've got like a.
Well, the guillotine should be the boogie of any system.
Yeah,
if you truly fuck with the people, it should be your boogeyman.
I got this advert for guillotines, like in my book. Like measure things cut once the guillotine, based on classic French design. This is my favorite.
Wait, whose head is that?
That's your boy, Cyclical.
Sorry, I couldn't see it. Yeah, that's like they're calling my boy.
I mean, sorry. So that bad Aussie accent Aydin just performed can be considered a war crime in Adelaide.
Well, I'm sorry. I said I don't know. That's why someone, the previous super chatter said I was a secret Australian. So I proved that I am not a secret Australian unless I'm a double secret Australian and able to also do a bad Aussie accent. That's some next level shit.
Lord Nemesis here in the chat says England is the 51st state of the United States of America. America says, and England jumps.
Yeah.
Sadly,
that's true. Though
more true than I'd like to admit. Yeah.
I mean that's part of the problem, though. Part of many problems discussed here is that the fact that the UK is somewhat beholden to the United States in terms of policy. That the UK at this point basically follows America or precedes it, dependent on what the policy is. We influence each other to such an extreme degree. But certainly, if the UK went directly against anything that America wanted, I don't think it would end well. I don't know what America would do, but I mean, like, it's certainly going to be ending trade. That would be horrendous. It'd be horrific.
Oh no! Don't stop sending us your chlorinated chicken.
I know.
We
It's
really
terrible.
love
What would
that.
you do? What would I live here? Like, what would we do with the chlorinated chicken?
Spoon says, if she wasn't Aussie, I would never be her friend.
Oh, Spoon.
That's great. So in your system, your fictional utopian system or whatever.
It's not utopian. Actually, it's like, hang on. Stop. Wait, pause real quick. This is the antithesis of a utopian system. This is a very realist system because I recognize all the problems with it. And if you recognize all the problems with your system, it's not utopian. Because as I said very early on, governments work in cycles. And monarchy is not a perfect system because there is no such thing as a perfect system because anything that involves people can never be perfect. So fuck off with that utopian shit, my dude.
I'm utopian. Humans are twats, so all governments are twats. That's
Precisely.
Definition. I was wondering, like, what's your idea on how we quote unquote choose the king? Like, that wouldn't be democratic. You're going for like a sort of, dynasties kind of thing. Like, what are you thinking? Like,
Okay. I don't. This is the most asked question, I would say, and I don't have an answer to it because how at this point for America, for example, we are orphans from the monarchic system. We have no monarch. We've never had a monarch. When we did, but we're totally separated. Our idea as a country is totally separated. So I don't know what we do. Kunat Lenin proposes a system. If you'd like me to go through it, I can read it. But so Kunat Lenin's proposal for a mixed monarchic system would be, and again, how you choose this monarch, I do not have an answer to. Neither does Kunat Lenin. None of us have an answer to this. So it's the same kind of thing that you get, I think, in a lot of more, if you call them idealistic. Although I don't think monarchy is an idealistic. It's actually a very historical political ideology. But if you're coming from a system like America, a country like America, where we don't have a monarch, I don't know if you can implement monarchy in America. But Kunat Lenin proposes this. There would be several sections of government. One would be an elected diet of representatives. The second would be a non-elected executive branch of people from all levels of society who are able to pass competitive examinations and would act on a 2-year probationary period before they could enact law. So it's like spend 2 years to see if they're not insane, but they are elected. Those two branches would temper what is good versus what the people want. And then third, you would have the monarch and his crown council. The crown council will be composed of his appointed advisors, representatives from the diet, and experts, as well as people from the Supreme Court, which I'll get into in a moment, who would all serve as mediators and experts to advise the monarch, but the monarch would eventually have the final say. The Supreme Court, the fourth level of government, is appointed by churches and universities. I understand how that is very contentious immediately upon saying it from everybody. This is Kunat Lenin. This is not me. Supreme Court appointed by churches and universities, which could be vetoed, however, by a 2/3 majority by the Diet. And those would be the people who would make decisions of law, much as they do in the United States. And they would have absolute veto over the monarch. So if you do have a Supreme Court that if the monarch is fucking nuts, you'd still have a Supreme Court that could say, wait a minute, we vetoed this. We vetoed the monarch because he's gone insane.
Yeah.
There's no way that Supreme Court thing about universities and churches doesn't piss people off, but it does give an opportunity for people to have an opportunity for people to say, like, if the monarch goes off the rails, that there's still some provision in place. Which, by the way, there has been, and this is something that's not necessarily understood, is that there has always been an opportunity within monarchic systems in the past, based on the aristocracy, where if a monarch went nuts, for the aristocracy to take over and say, hang on a minute, we need to remove this person. That has been the case throughout the majority of human history. And something that is oft, I think, forgotten about monarchy is that it worked, quote unquote, to better or greater degrees for the largest portion of human history. Most governments throughout all of human history have been monarchies. It's the largest, longest performing system of government. Democracy, communism, socialism are all comparatively young and short. Well, not young. I mean, democracy existed in Greece, obviously. Republicanism existed in Greece. But these are very comparatively, via the total perspective of history, short-lived systems. Monarchy is longitudinal. And even though it might have ups and downs, we're talking about long-term stability. Monarchy seems to be the best at maintaining longitudinal stability over the course of hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Just to like extract that out for a moment, like in the animal kingdom, like they still have these patriarchal societies led by like one alpha male or whatever. Like that is the foundations of monarchism as like the simple idea in it. Like it feels like the natural, like
it is kind of the natural order.
Like it was naturally selected or whatever.
It seems to be the natural way human society organized itself. And by natural could be put in like 1,000 quotes, by the way. But it seems to be the way that humans have organized themselves in almost every culture, in every civilization across human history. And that has, I would imagine that that's a case for a reason. Just as a psychologist.
Just get to this for a moment. Charlie's London for 1799 says, we have toilets in the UK older than the US Constitution. Let that sink in. Also, when George becomes king and technically Harry and Meghan's son becomes president, because he can, a British
he can.
Too. Sorry if I... You know, Boris Johnson was born in New York. Like, he's eligible to run for president.
Hey, I mean... UK and America are great allies, and that would be fine by me.
I like this one from Mr. Dungs. Crown Prince Hunter Biden sounds like a good plan.
Oh fuck! No, please no. That's a bad idea. That one's a bad idea.
While you're here, who have you got a favorite monarch? Like one that you liked the most from history, or
Catherine the Great?
Catherine the Great of Russia, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
she was. I think if she was given a test today, she would be considered autistic. If you've looked at her life in any kind of degree, she woke up at like 6 a.m. and had like an extremely detailed daily plan of how she would do one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. I think Catherine the Great was an exemplar monarch, and did nothing pretty much but expand the benefit and wealth of Russia.
I was really expecting more of like a meme answer from you.
You were expecting Catherine the Great.
Answer, I think she was good actually. Cool. Like, it's another subject. Oh, here we go. Peppermint oil capsule for £2 says, not USA's jump, it's NATO. Almost as one. You know, the Soviet Union tried to join NATO, and what a chat. Like fucking legends, just knock on the door, like put your balls on the table, like what are you gonna do? So yeah, like I think, like I said, I don't think there's anyone on YouTube you're gonna find who almost agrees with you as much as I do.
The problem is, people probably do. They're just I'll say it this way: the anti-SJW crowd. I don't mean this to disparage or cast aspersions upon anyone in particular, but the anti-SJW crowd kind of people are so involved in their sort of politic that they can't think outside of it a little bit. And for me, I'm more than willing to listen to anybody's political ideology and beliefs. I spend like half my time fucking talking to agorists, you know, like not half my time. I speak to a bunch of agorists. I speak to people who have all kinds of political beliefs because I don't think that I'm some master of knowledge. And I think anyone who gets that kind of idea about themselves needs to check it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And every single person on Earth knows something that I don't know, and
Precisely.
and it's my job to fucking get that out of you, and then we can
precisely. Precisely, but like just because I disagree with something doesn't mean that there isn't value in communication and discourse. And I think that we learn far more by conversating with one another and trying to like in a polite way. We're having a fun time, at least I am. I don't know, of just having this conversation and not being aggressive. And that is very useful towards political discussion. Like dude, can you imagine like the fact that a monarchist and a communist are talking to each other must blow someone's mind somewhere. You know what I mean? And not screaming.
It's I would wager that apart from like maybe if any of your friends are still here, like at this point, I think we've got an audience that almost entirely disagrees with both of us.
That's fine, but that's the great part about discourse. It's fine. You should disagree.
This is the point that I was trying to make to forced adversity. I mean, like he's one of those, you know, he's like a neoliberal, rad liberal, whatever, an American Democrat, Hillary fan, or you know, one of them, and like I am over here preaching to like the opposition, like and they're here like voluntarily listening to me and taking my points on board or whatever. He's just talking in his fucking bubble. So this last proper question that I've got for you, it was on the subject of like selecting the king or whatever, which I know you said you don't have an answer for.
I don't have an and I don't because I don't know how you do that.
So I'm trying to build my own little philosopher king at the moment, and I think that's the way we should be going. Like, let's get away from the posh Eton twats or whatever. The biggest problem that in democracy is its exploitation by wealth, and
exactly. Democracy totally exploits people by wealth as much as any other system does. It's why I'm not a fan of democracy. It absolutely is an elitist system.
When I was having my turn with Adam Friended, like, you know, his big stand for Elon Musk or whatever, really loves the dude.
I like Elon too.
Sure. Like, you want to invade South American countries with batteries, whatever.
But he is a South African. Is it South American? Sorry.
South American.
Yeah.
Okay. Richest South African man ever. Apart from that Malian king or whatever. Where are we going? What was
the Malayan king. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget his name. Musa or something.
Mansa Musa.
Adam Friended was basically preaching for a monarchy of the financial elites in it. Whoever made the money deserves to lead or whatever. It's unfair.
I mean, that might be the way that you come to a modern monarchic system. And again, if we're looking at the Cyclical of Plato, if we do move towards socialism and communism, which I actually think that we will first, I think that your system will absolutely become in power before mine. But I think that according to the Cyclical, the monarchy, or unfortunately, it usually ends up in despotism first, and that's a problem. But despotism leads into a stable monarchy system, and stable monarchies have been the most stable political system throughout the entirety of human history, in terms of longitudinal stability. When we look at uh, systems that have become communist, you have to know as well as I do that they've all been democracies, pretty much, with the exception of the Italian system, where the Italian king literally gives up out of protest. Systems that have become in Russia, it also is a republican or democratic system that becomes a communist system. For the most part, China is a little bit of a weird situation, but the systems that move in towards socialism are democracies, not monarchies, predominantly.
That brings me back to the original point I was going to make. Like, I saw a statistic saying like that 10 of the top 20 wealthiest countries in the world are constitutional monarchies or whatever. They're particularly like
again, Luxembourg and Liechtenstein are the most highest GDP.
Yeah, per capita or whatever. See, that's a good example of like using the maths to skew the numbers in it for propaganda.
Yeah, because they're super hyper small countries, right? Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. Skills. I forgot. Oh yeah, like I think that also those countries are the ones that show the most like social programs and like are the most ingrained in socialism.
Some of them do, but they. What I fear, however, is that I think that when the mob determines what is for the good of the people, that is less capable of understanding of what is actually good for them than from a top-down system of someone deciding what is good for the people. Because people generally are kind of stupid. I truly mean that as a social scientist who has studied a huge amount of social science and how people react to things. People are not good at making decisions for themselves, particularly as a group. Someone who is educated in political philosophy, in political psychology, in political science is far better, and particularly from birth, which is the benefit of the monarch, is better at deciding like, well, hang on, guys, I know this looks really good for you right now to make this decision, but it might not be good longitudinally. And I'd like to, I'll put up this I really precise and specific example, but one that I like a lot. And I like it because a lot of people that I talk about this with want to go back to extreme examples back in Greece, which, of course, where we had the first examples of democracies. So,
democracy for the rich and wealthy.
Well, precisely. So, but still, an early democracy is the earliest forms of democracy. I'm gonna light my cigarette.
I'm going to be really rude. I really need to go for a piss. So
yeah, go ahead and do it.
Put a pin in your thought.
No, I'm putting a pin in it. I know exactly what I'm saying.
I'm a modern man. I'm new wave. I'm a modern man. A man for the millennium. A diversified, multicultural, postmodern deconstructionist, politically, anatomically, and ecologically incorrect. I've been uplinked and downloaded, I've been inputted and outsourced. I know the upside of downsizing, I know the downside of upgrading. I'm a high-tech lowlife, cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, bi-coastal multitasker and give you a gigabyte in a nanosecond. I'm a hot-wired, heat-seeking, warm-hearted, cool customer. A high-concept, low-profile, medium-range, ballistic missionary. I interface with my database is in cyberspace. 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 A raging workaholic. A working rageaholic, but I'm feeling, I'm caring, and I'm healing, I'm sharing. A raging workaholic. A working rageaholic, but I'm feeling, I'm caring, and I'm healing, I'm sharing. You can't shut me up. You can't dumb me down. I got a personal trainer, a personal shopper, a personal assistant, personal agenda. I help power lies, take power naps, I run victory. I read junk mail, I eat junk food, I buy junk bonds, I watch trash sports. I'm new wave. I'm a modern man.
I love that song.
Very cool. I never heard that. Aw, rest in peace, my dude.
One of my heroes, that is.
He's great. I love George Carlin. But if you want my particular example, that I use very often, and there's an obvious critique of this, which we could I hope you bring up, but we get into it. So, in
No pressure.
no pressure. So we're looking at the Greco-Persian Wars. At one point, Aristagoras comes to the. At this point, by the way, have you looked at the Spartan system of governance? It is a weird system where they did have a somewhat parliamentary sort of system at the lower level. It was allowed to like make decisions for people, and I'm kind of in favor of that. And then they had at that point 2 kings, and what that meant was they had one monarch who ruled, but they had another like secondary one who was in place just in case that shit fell off, right?
2 kings.
Gay.
But the secondary king was in the wings in case the primary king fell off, or something bad happened. I'm not suggesting the Spartan system. This is just the system they were using. So Aristagoras, who is the former king of Ionia, he comes to the Spartans and he says, "Hey, we have been invaded by the Persians. The Persians suck. They have nothing but a bunch of like shitty spearmen. They suck. But they also have a bunch of gold and a bunch of slaves. And you can take all the gold and slaves if you just come and help us out. It'll be really fucking easy for you. You can come and just take all this wealth and gold and slaves." And the Spartan kings looked at that and they said, "That sounds dubious as shit. I don't think so." They looked at it because they had a political acumen that they were trained into and said no. Aristagoras then goes to Athens. Athens, 20 years prior, had become a democracy. The Athens democracy decides, that sounds great. We want a lot of gold and money. And this is the thing that you have to look at with democracies is they're going to look for temporary increases in personal wealth because that's what democracies are going to be based on, is how can I increase my personal wealth and power right now? And this is a very old example, but it applies today. So the Athenians go to war with Persia. Now Persia's over in the east, okay? They are not in Greece. The Athenians send a bunch of ships over there. They get their shit fucking wrecked. And the Spartans are forced to go back up the Greeks. And by that I mean the Athenians, excuse me.
Yeah.
The reality is, though, is that the Athenians made the wrong choice based on a democratic decision. They made that wrong choice because it sounded nice on paper. It was not a good decision based on logistics, whereas the Spartan kings understood this would not be a good decision. And I am not saying that all kings will make good decisions all the time. That's an absurdity. But the kings who are trained in the art of statecraft will have a little bit of a better understanding than the will of the mob.
Yeah. I am in agreement with you on it. Like that a good, strong philosopher king can make the correct decisions for the people. Great. It's getting one though, and it that's the hard part. Like,
the difference is now we all want a good philosopher king. I think everybody probably would. We want someone who could actually make because we have to understand that the will of the people is often wrong. I think everyone who is being realistic understands that people make bad decisions for themselves. That was just my example with the Spartan versus Athenian example. But the reality is that you get bad decisions from monarchs all the time. Of course you do. Because there is no perfect system of government. So me being a monarchist is not to say that monarchy is a perfect system of government. Of course you will have bad monarchs. Of course you will have a Nicholas. And Nikolai of Russia was born retarded. I don't know if you know that, but he had serious fucked up shit in his head.
That's a serious problem with all of the European monarchies, I think. Like, but that's what happens when you fuck your cousin.
Well, he has
shout out to people from Alabama
I mean,
and Norwich.
But we're talking about an aberration versus the rule, right? The fact that you will occasionally have a bad monarch is a terrible thing. But with a democracy, you will almost always have bad rule. And I would like to quote, from a rule here. Where do I have my quote here?
while you're looking for that, I just
Give
want
me 1 second.
Timothy also did the chat keeps asking, is she a commie or what? No, she's a monarchist.
I'm a libertarian monarchist. So the quote is, "The absolute ruler may be a Nero, but he is sometimes a Titus or a Marcus Aurelius. The people is often a Nero and never Marcus Aurelius." That's the problem. I would really, like, as a libertarian, I would really like for people to be able to make good decisions, but the reality is that mob rule is a very, very bad option for humanity because it causes people to enact petty discrepancies between one another and hurt one another.
And so when the SJW crowd are complaining about the oppression of minorities, that's like in this case, in the discussion about democracy, like that's exactly where it is. That's where it's happening. Like if the majority has the say over minorities, like I don't understand, man. Let's just be communists.
Well, but they're feeling that way. But when you look at the actual history of this, Brown v. Board, 1954, or the Open Society 2015 meetings, what actually is happening is that it's not, and Brown 1954 had a real issue, but the more current situations are using racial animosity in order to be able to put in their political ideology without actually explaining why it is beneficial to society. Brown versus Board 1954 had a real fucking point of trying to reduce racial animosity and racial discrimination. And I totally disagree with racial discrimination. It's disgusting. It's awful. But the reality is that they have taken over to a degree where they are now moving into, well, not just trying to equalize people, but trying to gain political power, as all groups will want to do under a democratic system or any system, for the most part. When you gain more power, you want to gain more and more power. It increases exponentially. And it's only under a democratic system that is so easily allowed for. It's under a democratic system that is so easily allowed for. You don't get that even under a communistic system, I would say, where you get one group that has a small kind of issue where they can just increasingly gain more and more ability to control the system. And I have major issues with the communistic system as well.
And it just reminded me of the whole thing. Just then talking about like minorities and majorities, like in democracy, like controlling, etc. Like it made me think about Iraq and the situations that they had there, which then reminded me of the Libya thing that I was gonna say like an hour ago or whatever. So some of the most successful monarchies are the ones where, like here in the UK we had monarchy, and then the people
you still have monarchy here.
Yeah.
Technically.
We like set up the parliamentary system, like in ever so slightly, like power was eroded, from the monarchy. The Queen could still theoretically bitch slap the Prime Minister.
The Queen can, by the way, at this current point of time, say fuck you to anything Parliament does. Technically.
Yeah. Like long for the day that she does it. Like
I wish.
It'll be great. But yeah, so then if you look in Libya, so everyone knows Gaddafi was the leader or whatever, but he had like the monarchs in Europe, like separated himself from actually ruling the country, and it the parliament ruled the country or whatever. But instead of having this like representative voting democracy that we have here, he had done like a jury service democracy, which is what I would like champion in it if I was in charge of
explicate, please,
or whatever. So you get a letter in the post. It says, Aydin, you've been called up to the House of Representatives for the next 2 weeks. Come on down. We'll explain the issues to you, the arguments for or against. You get to vote for your constituency or whatever.
What? Hang on. I have an immediate issue.
Go on.
Who decides who gets this random letter in the mail?
Who decides who gets jury service? I don't really have to do that either.
No, I know. I agree. This is all bullshit. I agree. Jury service is also bullshit in terms of the random letter in the mail. So, yeah, I don't like this in terms of a random letter in the mail. I don't. I'm suspect of. But go ahead.
I like it. My biggest take on it is that it removes all possibilities for corporate corruption in it, because
No.
the lobbyists will not know who has the vote until the day in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't buy
under the best
politicians.
under perfect circumstances, but you have to hope that the government is actually working the way it's supposed to work. But you have to understand that the government often, if not always, does not work the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, because humans are twats.
Because humans are twats, which is exactly why I said that, like, look, all governmental systems, which I started with, are shit. So you have to try and start with what is the governmental system that will minimize human shittiness. So my fear on that kind of system, and by the way, like, if you know how jury selection works, you can just like show up dressed as Princess Leia and be like, I don't believe in the government, I believe in the space democracy, and you won't get selected for jury service. You can do whatever the fuck you want. It would be the same kind of system in that if you don't want to serve in jury duty, if you want to serve in this kind of duty, you could. There's all kinds of ways you could avoid it, or you could choose to select to do it. Either way, it's that was a 30 Rock reference, by the way, but there's all kinds of ways you could get around the system of jury duty or of governmental duty that would maybe put the people who are best actually capable of removing themselves from the system because they don't want to be involved, because they don't want to be associated with any kind of political shit. So unfortunately, sometimes the most intelligent people will want to remove themselves from the system.
All right, I'll give you that. Where's that comment gone? Oh, we got another super chat. Did we read this already? I can't remember.
No, I don't think so. Something interesting I heard is that a king from a young age is grown trained to be a leader, while voting gets the most populous guy. Thoughts? Yes, I agree with this. So this is my perspective, where now, just because a king or queen is trained from birth does not mean they will be a good king or queen. However, there's a little bit of a difference fundamentally in the perspective philosophically, and that is that the king or queen who is trained from birth has a vast knowledge of civics. Now, someone who is running for a democratic position necessarily does not have a great knowledge of civics. Do you think Trump did, for example?
Yes.
I think Trump was a good leader, by the way, but he did not have a good knowledge of civics. Let's be fucking clear. He had no idea. He was totally running off of momentum. The reality is that actually most people who run for democratic positions of power don't necessarily have a good knowledge of civics, and that's okay for them under a democratic system. That being said, however, they can often make really terrible decisions, and the biggest problem with that particular system is that they are under no scrutiny longitudinally. If they completely destroy your country because of their lack of knowledge of civics, they just can abject and abandon their position, and they are gone. And now they cannot be held accountable under a democratic system, where under a monarchic system, they will be held accountable and there will be guillotines if shit is really fucking terrible. And that's the difference between a monarchic and a democratic system.
I'm all for like a strong leader who gets to say what we do. You know what I mean? Like, there's an example in China. They had like some contract to build like 50 nuclear power plants or whatever, and then some other scientists came along and was like, "Oh, we got these solar power plants that are cheaper, and it'll be better." So then the government's like, "Yeah, all right, fuck them nuclear power plants. We'll do that." Because they can just make a strong decision like that. Here in the West, there'd be all it'd be $1 billion lawsuits and that, and it like, "Oh, you didn't honor your contract with us," like, you know what I mean? Fuck
Yeah.
capitalists. Dale A says, "So does Cormac become a monarchist if he loses this debate?" It's not really a debate. I think that
No, we're just having a friendly conversation.
if as long as the king's communist, I'm down.
Well, let me ask you this question. What would you require of a king to consider him a communist? To apply the... Let me ask you this question. What would you require of a monarch to apply towards the citizenry what you would want under the perfect communist system?
Okay, so I would like everybody in a society to live as comfortably as the person running the society. Like,
It's
and then I'll be
impossible.
happy.
You know it's impossible, man.
I don't believe it impossible.
Okay, but let me put it this way. Mark, how many days a year do people work today to be able to fund their horrible capitalistic shitty system?
Like 255 is the number of weekdays in a year. So 255 minus 28 days, like state mandated holiday in the UK, less in America.
Do you know how many days medieval serfs worked? Oh, you got an example? You got a response?
Nowhere near as much. This is another thing that drives me crazy on it. Like, the work has never been easier. One man can do the work of 1,000 men now, but we work more. Like,
but don't you see that as kind of a problem?
Yeah.
But in 1500, the average person worked 150 days a year. The rest of their days were feast days. They worked 5 to 8 hours a day under the monarchic system. They had the rest of the year off. They didn't work at all. To me, that is a preferable system.
Yeah, like I would almost argue for like a sort of communist serf system, in it where you're mandated to do 2 hours of work a day in the community or something in exchange for your dinner and shit, you know, like but it's hard because you want to provide the people with liberty and freedom. Like, you should be able to be like, I want to go and live in France now, but I'm saying no, you gotta turn up at you gotta wash the dishes of your neighbors.
Uh-huh.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to balance. Like, and smarter people than either of us have failed to solve this problem. It's a hard question, isn't it? Like,
it is a hard question. Like, again, we have this bizarre, and I want to bring this up. Like, there's an interest. Much of what we know about monarchy, particularly in America, because America is totally fucked on this. But even in the UK, what we know about monarchy is often based on this idea of a kind of Robin Hood-esque perspective of the bad King John. The bad King John, what was he doing that made him so bad and nasty that the English wrote poems and legends about him?
It's taxes again, isn't it?
But what was the percentage of the taxes?
I'm sure you're going to tell me it's like 7% or something, but
it's 5%.
Yeah.
So my point is,
I would argue for 100% taxes. Like, I'd be happy to do away with the entire monetary system. Like, but that's a whole other thing.
But I mean, like, that's the whole point, is that the Robin Hood aesthetic. And by the way,
Robin Hood as a character within the mythos that we have created for ourselves as a kind of anti-monarchic system or anti-monarchic figure, Robin Hood himself was a monarchist. He just didn't like
Yeah,
King
just
John.
for the other king. I mean, like
He wanted the other king who had gone away to do his crusade. He just did not like the current king. Robin Hood himself was a monarchist, and he wanted another monarch. The reality is that much of what we understand of redistributing property and wealth towards people is not actually based on a system wherein monarchy is the evil system, but monarchy is actually one of the better systems of redistributing wealth and maintaining the fact and the possibility for people to be able to maximize their personal wealth, no matter what their background. Whereas I believe under democracy, you are held to a certain standard, wherein you're not necessarily based on your birth or your system of your background, able to achieve the kind of wealth that you would be able to achieve under monarchy. That's my personal perspective, but what do you think?
I think that we place too much emphasis on accumulation of personal wealth, and
I agree, it's a problem.
People need to understand that time is a great resource, not money. And that money's supposed to be a reflection of the value of time, but it is not. Like I sell an hour of my time every day for like £11 or something. But if my son was dying and the doctor said you can have one more hour, I'd pay £30,000, and it like the time's infinitely.
Yeah, all the money I have. For sure.
Exactly. I just want to come to this comment in the chat from this Eastern European person. It says, I can't understand how uneducated you should be to praise the Soviet Union. Does the commie realize he would be killed in 1937 for left-right opposition? I do. Like, I'm so like painfully aware of that. Like, I know that would be in.
Yeah, I think Mark's fully aware of that.
I think some people come here expecting me to be like a proper political commentator. I'm like a comedian, like I'm a comedy writer, and it like that's.
Yeah, I think people expect you to be like a extremist. That's why I wanted to have a talk with you, because you're not, and people expect you to be an extremist. I'm sorry, that's probably somebody from my side of things, but.
I've seen some terrible examples of other people on the left.
Well, it's really sad because I don't. I mean, again, I'm a libertarian. Like, I know I'm a monarchist, but like also I'm a libertarian, which means that I have a very like I don't give a fuck what you believe kind of perspective. And why I was really glad we could have this conversation, because this kind of conversation doesn't happen, Don't get too drunk, my man. I'll follow you very quickly, but this kind of conversation does not happen between people at all. No, it never happens. Like, I mean, I'm not like far right. I'm not like a kind of like. I think that should be overwhelmingly obvious. But I'm not like some kind of far right extremist. But I don't think there's any kind of useful conversation that generally happens to people of different political ideologies where we try to understand one another. And that is a big problem with political discourse.
I completely agree with that. So when I was at school, there's this one teacher, a science teacher of all, I'm going somewhere. And this one time, everyone in the class done this science paper. And everybody like did shit in it, even me. Like, and at school I was like pretty smart in it. Like, it really inflated my ego more than was necessary. But anyway, so everyone done really bad on this test in it, and then the next lesson or whatever, instead of doing the science lesson, she'd done a exams lesson. Like, this is how to pass the exams, and she was like, make sure you look at the marking system. You see, you can get 4 points for this question. That means you have to make 4 points. I really went through and explained this is how they mark exams and it. That one lesson, that 1 hour with Mrs. Akhtar boosted my performance in every subject across the board in it, by an entire grade in one go. Great lesson. One of the skills that she was on about was present the argument, present the opposite argument, explain the difference.
It's a Hegelian dialect.
Yeah. And I think
which I have a bunch of issues with the Hegelian dialect, but that's all right.
My point is that the ability to hold the two opposing views inside your mind and treat them as equal, regardless of whether you think they are or not, is an incredible skill. And a majority of people seem to be lacking, to be able to understand both perspectives.
Well, yeah, I had a similar position when I was in college. Now, I went to undergrad for communication. It's probably not evident now, but I'm super fucking autistic and really bad at human communication. But I'm better at it now, but that's because I literally went to school for it. And one of the things is that they taught us how to do exactly that, of how to talk and how to have human communication that didn't sound like you're spinning all over yourself and sound like a fucking moron. You have to learn that kind of stuff, of how to engage in the discourse. And I think we've done a pretty good job here. I hope so. I hope that we've engaged in discourse in a way that it is mutually beneficial. Because I don't know if you totally understood my perspective, but I think I understand some of your perspective. I don't know though, obviously. I'm not antithetical towards the communist perspective, by the way. I understand where people come from when they come from a communist perspective of wanting the maximalization of human liberty, when they talk about human liberty being the proletariat. I totally understand that. And so for me, saying human liberty, it's a little bit different from people who I think come from a communist perspective saying human liberty, where I mean it in terms of maximalization of human freedom that is in no way involved with the government. I think government should maybe be almost abolished. Again, monarchy, I think, is the best way to establish a system wherein you have an overarching government that can prevent the system from being attacked from outside sources while maximizing individual liberty within the state. That's why I propose monarchy, because I'm looking at it from a narco-capitalist sort of perspective. But I understand that people are always being manipulated and controlled by economic forces, and that is not liberty. So we have to kind of figure out how we measure and control these forces of the economic forces versus the governmental forces versus the social forces.
One of the things that I really enjoy about your content, Aydin, is that basically everything comes down to it's more complicated than that, and it lots of variables that affect everything. Charlie's London 4179 says yes, that's how good teachers do it. She's a teacher as well. Just making that point.
Yeah, thank you.
There was another one. Matt C says, "Oh, this is going to be one of those we live in a society streams."
It kind of is. I mean, I don't know. What? How do you feel about current society? I guess as a general gestalt.
Oh wow! So the question that I'm hearing, whether it's the question you're asking or not, is I think that we're heading towards a bad place. If everything carries on how it is, I think overall it's going downhill. There are moments of, there are things that I'm enjoying, so it's hard to What do you think? How do you think society is doing?
May I ask you then? Why do you think the reason it is that things are going downhill? Because I agree. Do you think that that's politically valenced or not?
So my measure will always be like on how the people are doing, and I think that people are more exploited. They're working harder than ever
I
for
agree.
less than ever when producing more than ever. We can point to a bajillion graphs that will show you that productivity continues to rise while the benefits of that are not being
It's
passed on to the
fucking
people.
hilarious to me that myself, as a libertarian and a communist, can completely agree on the fact that people are being exploited.
This is the point that I make all the time, where we will all we can all agree on the problems. It's the solutions that we argue over. Marsupial Gamer in the chat says, "I just assumed Mark was only LARPing as a communist. People do it. I am legitimately a communist. That is a thing."
But Mark, you're the most reasonable communist I've ever spoke to.
I'm gonna take.
I mean, whatever that means. But the reality is that libertarians, such as myself, also see the exact same issues you're looking at, of the destruction of the middle working class, of people not being able to work and obtain a living wage and be disgusted by it. I think that is not politically involved. That is an inherent thing that anyone of any political ideology can understand and observe if they are paying attention.
I think that 3 out of the 4 corners of the political compass would agree on that. With the one of the corner, like, fuck you, all the money.
There's maybe one. Well, I think there's maybe 2 that might. I think it's the lower left are in agreement for sure. Excuse me, the lower parts of the political compass are in agreement that people's rights are being intruded upon.
My boy Stancelitis Jan in the chat says it's the media manipulation of multinational companies screwing people over, which I completely agree with.
I also agree with. This is the fucking issue. Left and right libertarians tend to agree on many things. Well, I don't know if you consider yourself a libertarian, obviously, but left and right on the lower side of the political spectrum, even though I do consider myself a monarchist, that monarchy thing is based on wanting to maximize personal freedom, and it's not based on my, what would you call it, idealistic political belief. I would love an anarcho-capitalist society. However, I don't think it can exist. And I have done a lot of research on why I don't think it can exist. And so that's why I don't support it.
Real capitalism's never been tried.
It's never been tried, my dude.
They were called the robber barons, and it we didn't like that very much. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Matt C says Mark's only a little high. We've been going for nearly 2 hours, which is almost double what I'd normally subject a guest to.
Oh, good man.
So, I'll carry on talking to you after, if you want. But is there anything? Did you have a final thought? Have you got a Jerry Springer's final thought or anything you want to?
No, not really. But my next video will be on the idea of public discourse and whether or not it is harmful to democracy. So that will be my next video. That will be coming out in about 2 weeks, I think. By the time now it's 1,400 words long. It'll take a while.
I wrote a video the other month. Sorry to interject on you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was writing a video about the alphabet agency's involvement in Syria. In the whole Syrian conflict. And I recorded 12 minutes of audio just explaining, just to get you into the groove of 2011, going through the Arab Spring, what happened.
Yeah. I'm actually talking about the Arab Spring as well.
Pardon?
I'm actually going to be talking about the Arab Spring as well in my video.
Yeah, so I done 12 minutes, and then I got to, and then Syria. This is too long. Like, people want like snappy stuff. I know your video.
Well, I guess they do, but it's a total mix. I'll tell you this: it's a complete mix. People either want 10-minute videos, under 10-minute videos, or they want like hour and a half long videos, and there's no in between. You either have to make like a documentary or you don't. So I'm moving towards the documentary kind of line I always have, because that's, I mean, to be honest, like if I don't provide sources for absolutely everything I say, people will get very upset, and they will say I'm wrong. Here's another source. Here's another source. But the reality is, I do extensive research on everything I do. But that's the trade-off of doing a short video versus a long video. With short video, like, you're going to be accused of missing things. So you got to always figure out what's the best thing for you, you know?
Yeah. That's why I really enjoy the way that in your videos, like, everything's like, oh, and here is the study that like shows what I'm saying. Everything's like cited, if that's a word.
Cited, yeah.
I prefer like to frame things in an almost Taoist way, you know, like, so it sounds wise, so people just agree. You know, you just say the same thing forwards and backwards, like it's gonna be really hard.
Well, I've been listening to The Art of War recently on like when I go to sleep. So maybe that's going to affect my psychology. I don't know.
The Art of War is the first book that I read to my child, isn't it? Like,
Oh, really?
when he was,
Oh,
like,
wow.
2 days old or something.
You do have to read, because it's I read it. I listen to it while I go to sleep, and it's interesting perspective. I don't know how true it is, but certainly very true for the temporal perspective.
For me, it was one of those books where you read it and you go, yeah, duh, you know, obvious. Oh, you're going to attack a castle. Maybe attack the weakest part of the castle to the front door. Like, yeah, obviously. But then we've got the benefit of like 5,000 years of culture or whatever.
2,000 years of history, yeah.
Reno for $5 says Aydin Paladin plus EFAP crew could have a 24-hour discussion on pop culture.
Oh, we absolutely did. And I remember the best time I had with EFAP was when we just made fun of the Manx flag for like 30 minutes, and Mueller laughed so hard I think he maybe died a little bit. If you've never, you have to have, dude, Mark, you have to have seen the flag of the Isle of Man.
Oh, yes. It's one of my like top 10 flags in the world.
It's a hilarious, horrifying flag of a bunch of legs.
Yeah.
A great flag.
It's right up there. So look at you, like, talking about flags as well. Flags is another one of my like secret passions, and I talk about it all the time. I love maps and flags. I'm always scared someone's going to clip me saying I love maps. Like, I mean, like geographical maps.
Well, I mean, like, so I'm an American, so nothing that I say means anything, honestly. But so like, my family did a whole bunch of, well, my dad did a whole shit ton of genetic research on my family. And it turned out that I'm very, very, okay, I'm like 4th in line to be Lady of Bewdley, and we're mostly highly Welsh. So I have totally adopted the Welsh.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Fuck off! Fuck off! We knew we were Welsh. We knew my grandmother and her family were they were from Wales. Wow, look at how the bongs always insult the Welsh. Dude, we'll doot you the fuck out of our island, my dude. You're not supposed to be here. You're all invaders. By the way, you know you're a colonialist.
Yeah, sucks, isn't it?
Yeah. Colonizing our island. Get the fuck out.
It's just the natural behavior of monarchies, isn't it?
It is. I guess it is. Get the fuck off my island. If people think I'm serious, But because I know people can't take jokes, that was a joke.
My audience knows jokes. That's why they're here. Because I'm
I know. Just have to be clear, because otherwise it'll get clipped. Be like,
oh yeah. So you mentioned flags in it. Flags. I love
yeah,
flags.
flags.
My favorite flag in the world is
Bhutan?
the flag of Angola.
Yeah.
So let me just get a
I know
picture.
the flag of Angola. People don't know it, but
My keyboard isn't working. All right, fuck that. I can't show you a picture. The flag of Angola is it's red on the top, black on the bottom, and then it's got half a gear and a machete as the African equivalent of the hammer and sickle in it, the cog and machete. Fucking sick. It's my favorite flag. I also enjoy the flag of Mozambique, which is the only flag in the world to have AK-47s on it. Which is pretty fucking badass.
Holy shit, I forgot that. Very based flag, to be honest.
Both of those are former Portuguese colonies.
Well, I mean, to be honest, they had to kick the Portuguese out, honestly.
The Portuguese invented...
I mean, how's it been going for Mozambique since then, but whatever.
Mozambique's cool.
No, go ahead and ask a question. No, I'm going to ask the question. How's it been going for Mozambique since they kicked the Portuguese out?
I don't know.
Do you not know? Because the answer is not well.
That checks out. Renault says the flag of Nepal is also appropriately...
The flag of Nepal is the best flag.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's like a real balls out flag in it. Like
no, it's just a tricolor, but it's got like a cut in it, like a triangle cut.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you're really asking a lot of the flag making companies, and it like oh, you just want to print off flags. Gotta try a bit harder for Nepal. Like really.
You can't do better than the Isle of Man. You can't do better. Their flag is legs.
It's strong.
Their flag is literally legs.
I do like it. All right.
Let's finish this up, man.
Let's wrap it up. All right. So, Aydin, Paladin, thank you so much for coming on. I've really had a nice time talking to you. This is one of my favorite things about being a YouTuber, getting to talk to cool people, and you're one of those. So I implore everyone in the chat to go and subscribe to Aydin Paladin, and I realize this looks like I'm not subscribed. This is a different.
That's all right. You're not subscribed. It's fine.
Private stuff.
I know.
Go and give her a subscription on it. And if you're here because you normally watch Aydin's channel, give me a subscribe as well.
Yes, please check out Kami Mark. If it's not obvious, by the way, guys, like we did not have like a fight or something that I think people might have expected. But I think the reality is that the kind of conversation that you and I have had over the last 2 hours or whatever is the kind of conversation people should be having. You know what I mean? Of legitimate, peaceful, and not aggressive, nasty conversations, which is what is so endemic across the political landscape. Even though you and I think are very... Well, I don't know about this. You and I both think democracy is probably a shit system. So, despite that fact, we both agree with that kind of thing. We have very different ideas of how you fix the fact that democracy is a shit system. But that's what's cool about this. Like, we can have totally different opinions and come to a very... we can still conversate, which is the horrifying thing that I find with most online communication, which is that like when these kind of debates happen, most of the time it's like really aggressive and violent, and it's not pleasant and as I think we've done here, productive.
One of the big observations that I had when I watched a lot of like BreadTube stuff and like trying to work out how to crack that market or whatever. And none of them are legitimately having conversations. They're all just trying to like beat each other on technicalities, and it like, oh, ha ha ha, you said the wrong word, and that means that or whatever. Fuck those dudes. Like, let's just be nice and talk to each other, right? Like saying, just
Like
because,
just to be really clear, I would love for communism and for anarcho-communism in particular to be the best system that worked. It would be my idealistic system. My problem is I don't think it works. I said very like an hour and a half ago that I was an anarcho-communist when I was a younger person, and my problem was that I didn't find that it worked. So
I keep saying, like, I think utopian in it. Like, one of the exercises that I learned was like, work out where you want to go.
mhm.
Imagine you're there and work backwards to where you are now. In it, there's a good thought, like exercise for how to get to a place.
Just don't be rude to people that you inherently think you disagree with.
Yes,
Talk to them.
just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that I hate you.